This Freedom Day, it will be very difficult for women and girls in South Africa to mark the day. Amnesty International South Africa says the scourge of gender-based violence and femicide is continuing. The organisation says government isn't taking the GBV pandemic seriously enough, despite years of promises to do so. Shanila Mohammed is with Amnesty International South Africa. She's the Executive Director and joins us from here in Johannesburg. Shanila, it's with a massive sigh that we have this conversation as women, because we seem to be having it every time there's a day marking our freedom in some way, shape or form. You point to the fact that just in February, the latest crime statistics showed that over 11,000 people were raped between October and December of last year alone. Between October and December of last year alone. And we also know that the reportage of rape is extremely low in South Africa. So you can probably take that number and times it by goodness knows how many women in South Africa are probably being raped. Your thoughts on today, as we are supposed to mark a momentous occasion where South Africans finally gained their freedom?
Good evening, Marcel, and good evening to your viewers. I mean, absolutely. I think that, it's difficult for women and girls to really celebrate today, because South Africa still remains one of the most unsafest countries in the world for women. And, the levels of gender-based violence, rape, femicide are just horrendous in this country. And I think, the sad reality is that we've seen a lot of promises being made, but we have not seen delivery. We have not seen accountability. We are not seeing a decrease in the numbers of cases. And, the backlog of DNA, for example, is still huge. The prosecution rate of gender-based violence cases is still amongst the lowest in the world. So, yes, we do have to sigh in despair, because, for women like you and me and other women in this country, South Africa is not a safe place to be living in.
It really isn't. And it does seem that every few months, at some point, and normally it feels like every week, there is a case that makes the country gasp as a collective. There are marches that happen. There are press statements that are sent out. The president and a specific cabinet member sends out a statement, making all the right noises and making the same promises over and over again. Why are we struggling as a country, both as society and government, to take even one step in the right direction to try and get to the source of the scourge?
Well, Marcel, I think that, we're struggling because we are not seeing the political rhetoric translate into action. I think that our president is very good at making promises, but I feel holding his people who are supposed to deliver to account doesn't seem to appear one of his greatest strengths. So, for example, one of the challenges that we've seen with gender-based violence in particular is the way in which the police approach the cases, the way in which the police treat victims of gender-based violence, and we have not seen an improvement there. The way in which police collect evidence at scenes. I mean, we have been pushing for a case of Poppy and Bongeka, two young ladies who were brutally murdered, and, it's in 2017, there has still been no justice for them. And what we saw when we investigated the case was the problem lay at the hands of the police, who did not collect the correct forensic evidence. And if they don't have that evidence, it's impossible for the prosecution to prosecute. So on that level, there's a problem. At the level of, the justice system, there seems to be a problem in bringing perpetrators to account. And so, I think what we need to see is less talk and more action. We've had huge amounts of money being promised. Where is that money? Who is accounting for that money? What is that money being spent on? We need to see that. And I don't think that, the state is being open and transparent with the people of this country.
And then you add to that very long list you've just mentioned the high number of South Africans living in abject poverty that puts women and children in very, very vulnerable positions, something we're again aware of as a result of these floods that we've seen in KZN. And already NGOs are saying they're worried about the women and children in shelters and what's going to happen to them. So it just looks like it's a broken cycle that there isn't political will to fix, even though we have organizations, civil society organizations, doing so much in terms of great work as well. Let's look at your organization's, the third phase of your gender-based violence campaign, hashtag Interrupt Broken Promises. You've just launched the third phase now in April of this year. And now you say it is time to hashtag Interrupt Broken Promises. Tell us what you're demanding under that hashtag.
Well, basically what we're saying is that, we need to interrupt whatever the state is doing and make them stick to the promises that they have made. And, because we really feel like the only way we are going to see a difference is if the state stops breaking the promises that it's made to the people. So we want to see the police, for example, being trained in how to deal with cases of gender-based violence. We want to see more prosecutions. We want to see better evidence gathering. We want to see the backlog of DNA being dealt with really swiftly and efficiently. We want to see perpetrators being brought to justice. The reality is, Marcel, that if somebody does commit this crime, unless it's a high-profile case, the chances are very high that people get away with these things, with these attacks on women. And so what we're saying is that, no single life or violence or sexual violence against a woman should ever go undealt with. But also we want to see better education in schools, starting from a young age, teaching people and children how to deal with conflict. I mean, we see that violence has become the main way of dealing with conflict in South Africa, whether it's conflict in the home, whether it's conflict outside of the home. And people need to be taught these social skills where, they don't resort to conflict, to violence every time there's a problem in the home. They don't hire hitmen to get rid of people. They don't rape women. I mean, we saw during COVID, the numbers were frightening. The increase it was almost threefold increase in the cases of gender-based violence. And, again, you're absolutely right. There is a role that poverty, inequality, and, the fact that people just don't have their basic rights and dignity plays in this. But it's bigger than that. It's a much bigger societal, cultural issue, and it's a much bigger systemic breakdown in the government institutions and the way in which they are tackling with gender-based violence.
You're absolutely right on that point there, because one can point to other societies in the world where people also live in poverty and gender-based violence is not as serious an issue as it is here in South Africa. One final question before I do let you go, because unfortunately we've run out of time. If you had to send a message to government tonight, could that message be that there also is a great lacking in terms of there being an actual formal strategy on how to tackle the scourge and targets that need to be set? Just like, and I know one doesn't want to be flippant and say, in the corporate world, their performance appraisals, their targets, their goals that are set, their strategies and their strategies within strategies. Is that what is also lacking in terms of government's approach to this? Because this, like we've now said throughout this interview, this is not a fight that can be done in silos. It has to across all departments and all sectors of society.
Well, Marcel, we have the National Strategic Framework, which is supposed to do exactly what you're saying. But what we've seen is a lack of political will for implementation and a lack of accountability. And very few of the targets that they set themselves, that they have met. And so, the sort of message I would send to President Ramaphosa tonight is, President Ramaphosa, you need to hold your people to account. You need to be asking questions as to why things are not improving. You need to ask the police commissioner, for example, or the minister of police, why the police are not being trained, why the evidence is not being gathered, why the DNA backlog is not being dealt with. And, rather than just trying to placate the public, it's the women out there who are facing the danger. And we no longer want to hear words of, just trying to make us feel better or, make empty promises. We want to see a difference. I want to be able to walk down the street without being scared. I want to be able to drive without looking through my rearview mirror. I want not to be worried if my daughter is out because I'm afraid something is going to happen. And I think think this is something that all women can relate to in this country. And we need President Ramaphosa to hold his people to account.
I know I said that was one final question, but I do have one more, because I remember just a few months ago there was a murder of a woman in the UK, and they started a campaign. I forget the hashtag, but it was around let me know when you're safe, or let me know when you're home. And as South African women on social media, there was this outcry, and we were like, but we've been doing this for years. I mean, I live in Johannesburg. My mother lives in Cape Town.
Exactly.
When I leave here and I go home, I still need to message her to say, I'm home safe. That's not normal.
And we all do it, Marcel. We all do it on a daily basis. And we've started to normalize this type of behavior. We started to normalize looking over our shoulders. But let's be honest with ourselves, Marcel. We are not comfortable.
No.
And there are very few women that can say that they are living comfortably, no matter where they are. And no matter, what race they are, what social strata they're in, it cuts across. They're all races, all social stratas. So there's clearly a huge problem. And actually, the main duty bearer to solve this problem is the state, and they are failing us.
Absolutely. That's Shanila Mohammed, Amnesty International South Africa's Executive Director, joining us virtually from here in Johannesburg. Thanks for your time tonight, as always.